How did I end up here? Lying in your arms, watching city lights burn the stars.
Alright, we're all here for one thing and one thing alone. A hero guide on the 3 new Overwatch heroes. I guess that's actually 3 things, but whatever. The hero guides are back in form, so my apologies for keeping you waiting so long. And, well, with that said, let's get into them. Because, you know, what else would we be here for? The first hero in the dock here, and also the first to be confirmed for Overwatch 2, funny how that works, Sojourn is of the damage role, a role that may or may not have a few too many heroes in it, at least when put side by side with the other 2 roles, but damage role heroes have always been the more popular ones throughout games with role systems, so it's understandable why it is that way and why it has so many. My personal feelings as a support main aside though, which we'll luckily be getting to later on, from my experience so far, Sojourn is a very unique damage role hero. As for her place in the story/lore of Overwatch, she's a former strike team leader who's pretty much entirely kitted out with prosthetics. I mean, just look at her. What is this? Cyberpunk 2077? Anyway, despite all of that, Sojourn is a really cool addition to the roster, not just for the fact we've known about her since 2019 in that year's Archives event mission, Storm Rising, well, even further back in the animated Recall short, but also because her inclusion is supposedly going to start moving the actual story of Overwatch forward, so that's nice. Whatever that even means for the online multiplayer shooter part anyway. Now, before we get into the gameplay of Sojourn, I want to bring attention to the passive ability that's role-wide for the damage roll, and that's that eliminations will grant a short burst of movement and reload speed. The tank and support roles have passives too, but we'll highlight those when we get to the relevant heroes. As you would expect from most heroes in the role, Sojourn has great maneuverability options and great damage output, duh. However, the latter can maybe be brought into question. To start, her railgun. With 45 ammo to burn through, the primary fire of the railgun has a super fast firing rate, non-existent spread or recoil, requiring you to be pinpoint accurate with all of your shots. And with the more shots you land, the more the secondary fire will build up, as indicated in the middle of the screen, with the higher count, up to 100, allowing for a more powerful burst shot that, once again, requires pinpoint accuracy. In other words, the railgun is an easy to understand weapon but one with a high skill ceiling. To note, despite the firing rate, the railgun is a projectile type weapon, not a hit scan type one. So while dealing with firers and such is feasible, it's not overly reliable for such an instance. However, the secondary fire is a hit scan type attack. So if you want to blast flying targets out of the air, absolutely go for it, my dude. And yes, you can headshot damage with both primary and secondary fire. Moving on to Sojourn's first ability, Power Slide. This ability is much like any other horizontal slide you find in other shooter games, with Sojourn being able to slide in any direction that you're moving, but the ability can also be cancelled into a high jump, which you can use to easily get to higher ground. Together, or just the slide alone, are good for getting yourself out of precarious situations, or even engaging the fight because the cooldown time of 6 seconds is a pretty generous one. Her second ability is Disruptor Shot. Think of this as a mini graviton surge, except instead of holding enemies in place, it has a weaker gravitational pull that slows enemies, but also deals a considerable amount of damage, depending on how close the enemies are to its centre. This one can pretty quickly mess up anyone who gets stuck in it. Lord knows I've been the victim of one a few times, but it's unreasonable to expect enemies to just sit still in it, so use it as a setup ability to soften up foes and then finish them off. For Sojourn's final ability, we, of course, have her ultimate, Overclock. This allows Sojourn to fire unlimited charge shots without the need for charge for a short period of time, and it also pierces enemies, meaning it will travel through enemies, so line up your shots and have at them. I used to do this all the time back in the good old days of the original Hero Guides series, so I'll do it again here. As a general tip for Sojourn, she's very much a glass cannon in terms of what her kit requires of you. So if you're struggling to land all of your shots, especially the charge shots of secondary fire, prioritise shredding through tanks in the time between your disruptor shot is charging, and use that to nail down the smaller targets. Keep in mind also, you don't have to be in the enemy's face to deal damage. It's perfectly fine to play from a safe distance, both thanks to the railgun's non-existent spread and fall-off damage. The Queen of the Wasteland and the discount Borderlands character herself is also finally playable in Overwatch. Another hero we've known about for a while, ever since Junkertown became a playable map back in 2017 in fact, with posters of her being placed around the map and her welcoming you into the actual town part of the map upon escorting the payload to its first checkpoint. And honestly, with the heroes that have come and gone through speculation about making it into the playable roster, I think I was always most excited for Junker Queen. So to finally have her playable, that's really cool honestly. and coincidentally, she also feels great to play. But before we get into her kit and all, what about her place in the lore? Well, for as much as I would love to go into detail, it is all perfectly depicted in an amazing cinematic trailer, The Wastelander. But to summarise, after being banished from Junkertown along with her family a number of years ago, she worked her way back into Junkertown by becoming a gladiatorial mech champion, and proved herself against the new former king, showing him the same kind of mercy he showed her all that time ago. A simple overview, I know, but I'm not an Overwatch lore channel, so what did you really expect? But that said, I do love the Junker Queen, both in terms of character and her gameplay, which we're about to get into. Good segues here on the channel Lunar Odyssey, they're rarer than you think. As I did with Sojourn and her damage roll passive, I want to draw attention to Junker Queen's tank roll passive. Not only does this reduce her knockback, but her ultimate charge is reduced upon receiving third-party healing and or damage buffs, e.g. from other support heroes like Mercy. I specifically said third-party healing and or damage buffs because otherwise, it will get confusing when talking about her passive ability, Adrenaline Rush. Think of this like the auto health regeneration that support heroes have, but it only works when wounds are inflicted upon enemies. To clarify, think of the term wounds as a bleed effect in JRPGs and the like, where it's a damage over time effect, an effect that Junker Queen can apply with two of her abilities. This one's a mess in terms of structure, but bear with me here, because before I get into those two abilities, I, of course, want to talk about her main form of bleeding damage, her Scattergun. The Scattergun is a pump-action shotgun that, as you would expect, does tremendous damage up close, but despite that, it does do pretty decent damage from range too. Of course, it's obviously much better to play the Scattergun as you would with Reaper's shotguns to get the best use out of it, but never underestimate the range of the shots when you think you can finish an enemy off. It certainly surprised me a couple of times. Enough beating around the Wasteland bush now, how about those abilities? To start, we've got her Jagged Blade. Upon pressing the bind once, Junker Queen will throw a dagger in front of her, which has a slight arc to it, and upon pressing the bind again, or just holding it once thrown, she'll pull it back to her, along with any other enemy that you landed with it, much like how Thor does with Mjolnir, though I guess the Stormbreaker would be the more appropriate comparison. Here's where things get a little interesting. See, this ability introduces a hidden stat, which I'm going to refer to as weight class. See, an enemy's weight class will determine how far they will get pulled towards you when you call back the Jagged Blade. To simplify this, I've categorized the heroes under three weight classes, the names of which I pulled directly from Mario Kart: Featherweight, Middleweight and Heavyweight. So, for example, Tracer falls under the Featherweight category, Junkrat falls under the Middleweight category, and Roadhog falls under the Heavyweight category, as you can see in the example on screen. Honestly, this isn't rocket science, just note that there are only really two Featherweight heroes, those being Tracer and Diva or Mech, and the whole of the tank category can be considered heavyweights, while the rest of the heroes are considered middleweights. Pretty simple, really. Jagged Blade also inflicts the damage over time effect I mentioned earlier, and you don't even need to land a blade into an opponent for it to take effect. Just calling it back and them being in the path of the blade is enough for it. Oh, by the way, did you know that Junker Queen's melee uses the same knife, which not only applies the damage over time effect, but also makes it the strongest melee in the game because of this? Well, now you do. Next, we got Commanding Shout. This is an ability that temporarily buffs Junker Queen, a rare thing for the tank category, but it also buffs allies around her in a large circular radius, increasing health and movement speed quite dramatically. Of course, with tanks being the least maneuverable role in the game, in a lot of cases, this ability is an absolute godsend. Similar to Sojourn's Power Slide, Commanding Shout can be great for either engaging a fight or disengaging from one, giving you a little extra time to escape, but I'd recommend always using it to initiate a push or for when you're anticipating a push from the enemy team. Thirdly, Carnage. This has Junker Queen swing an axe in front of her, dealing pretty alright damage and applying the damage over time effect again, just like the Jagged Blade. Despite how it looks in the wind-up time, Carnage isn't the super heavy, super damage attack you'd expect it to be, unfortunately. But it's great when comboed into Jagged Blade. Impale an opponent, pull them back and swing at them. When you can pull it off, it feels great. Remember again, anytime Junker Queen applies a wound effect, you'll heal from it, and it's the exception to the tank roll's passive. A force to be reckoned with for sure. And we're not done yet. We still have her ultimate, Rampage. This has Junker Queen charge in a linear direction in front of her, damaging and applying both the wound effect and an anti-healing effect to anyone she charges through. So pretty much, you see her lined up, go for it and open up that team fight. I would say this is best combined with Zaya's Graviton Surge, but you can only run one tank now, so damn. Though to be fair, unlike Graviton Surge, Rampage is considered a melee attack, so there's no threat against you deflecting your whole ass ultimate. Nevertheless, Junker Queen's entire kit makes her one hell of a force to be reckoned with, and being one that encourages you to be aggressive makes her my ideal hero to play. But despite that, it can be best to practice caution here and there. With such an aggressive playstyle, it's easy to feel like you're all powerful, but you're not. Junker Queen has the lowest health out of the entire tank category at 425, likely because of the additional effects she can apply and her abilities to heal on doing damage from those effects, so you are kind of frail. And with no form of protection such as a shield, this is especially so. So that said, when engaging a single target, go for it, but push with your team otherwise. Despite what our character might suggest and the fact that she's kinda hindered by supports, Junker Queen is a hero that benefits from teamwork, so push alongside your DPS and you should be golden. The first entirely new hero and newest support, Kiriko. I'll say this right out of the gate, Kiriko is super fun to play. Probably the most fun hero out of the new three in my opinion, but that's neither here or there for now. The protector of Kanizaka, she strayed from her family's traditions for protecting the place by forging her own path, styling herself as a medic and a warrior, as reflected in her playstyle, using her Fuda cards to heal and kunais to deal damage, and also has the supernatural ability to teleport, so yeah, part magician too. Oh, and she also has the pet Kazuni spirit as well, she's really got it all. That's the extreme simplification of what Kiriko is, sure, but again, I'm not a lore channel. Her cinematic trailer was so good though, I would die for her frame 1. First, drawing attention to her support role's passive, allowing the role to heal damage taken over time, just like how it worked in Overwatch 1, so nothing we haven't seen before. As for Kiriko's second passive, Wall Climb. This is no different to Genji and Hanzo's Wall Climb passive, simply letting her scale climbable surfaces, providing her with some decent maneuverability. Now for her main ways of, well, healing and attacking. To start, her healing of Fuda, which are target seeking talismans that heal for a pretty good amount, almost being a full health restore for 200 health heroes when they get down super low. Up to 10 can be fired at once if you hold down the bind, with 2 being fired at a time if you just tap. You can interrupt the sending by either meleeing or throwing a kunai, aka her secondary fire. The target seeking aspects of the healing of Fudas aren't perfect, so they're not going to flawlessly follow a target around its corner should you have thrown them before then. So it's all about keeping an eye on your teammates and kind of predicting where they'll go next. However, this isn't necessary most of the time, so don't stress too much about mind reading. Next up, her kunais. Kiriko will throw one of these at a time, and landing a headshot will do increased critical damage, which means they have a higher critical damage multiplier, a 3 times multiplier, than compared to other critical damage multipliers, like with increased Peacekeeper, a 2 times multiplier. Despite the kind of abysmal firing rate, how you're going to have to be pinpoint accurate with each one, they're best played at a distance, which the same can be said for Kiriko's healing of Fuda. Plus, it's just super satisfying to land those headshots with them. Swift Step is Kiriko's first ability, and it's the teleportation ability, somewhat like Tracer's recall but without the winding back time to become a damage part. With this, you can teleport to an ally, and this includes through walls, both as a means of escape and or means to get to an ally back to health quicker. Unfortunately though, the ability is rendered inept by things like Junkrat's traps or Sigma's Graphenic Flux, so don't go baiting traps. Wait, that sounds kind of weird given certain context. Anyway, Kiriko's second ability is Protection Suzu. When thrown, this provides super brief invulnerability, similar to Baptiste's Immortality Field ability, to any teammate caught in the splash and cleanses allies of certain effects, like Anna's Bionic Grenade, Anti, and Junker Queen's Rampage by extension, May's Blizzard Ultimate, and even Sombra's Hack, so hey, there's something that balances out the insane buffs that she got for Overwatch 2. And though it doesn't cleanse certain effects like Graviton Surge or again Graphenic Flux, remember it can still provide brief invulnerability, so time your throw right and your teammates should be okay. And finally, her ultimate, Kitsune Rush, or as I like to call it, Gates to Hell. Upon use, Kiriko summons a Fox Spirit that charges forward, leaving a pathway behind it that will buff the movement speed, rate of fire, reload time, and a 3 times cooldown reduction to any and all teammates, including yourself, standing within it by 50%. 50% may not sound like a great deal, but I'm sure you've seen the clips of Zenyatta going Super Saiyan floating around on Twitter or whatever. So yeah, the buffs are pretty damn significant. Hey, Editor Lunar here. Turns out they actually nerfed Zenyatta's firing rate when combined with Kitsune Rush in the October 13th, 2022 patch, so my bad. And hence why I call Kitsune Rush Gates to Hell, because it opens up a pathway of destruction through 3 gates referred to as Tories in Japan. That is hell to fight against for the other team. Oh, and your own team if there's an enemy Kiriko, I suppose. While there are a couple limitations to Kitsune Rush, like not affecting Torbjorn's turret or Junkrat's Riptire, there are so many other things it does affect that are a fair trade-off. Stuff like Bob, Ash's ultimate, the tick rate of Winston's Tesla cannon, or abilities that have a distinct firing rate like Hanzo's Storm Arrows or Roadhog's Whole Hog ultimate. Honestly, experimenting with the ultimate is a whole lot of fun, and just to note, the effects stack with Baptiste's defense matrix and or Anna's nano boost, so, you know, just thought I'd say that. While I recommend playing Kiriko at a distance, it is viable to play her up close or alongside heroes who excel in flanking, Such an example being to use Swift Step to get to an ally who's gone behind and using Protection Suzu if they end up in trouble, and then keeping them alive using the Healing of Fuda. And then, if you stay alive long enough, you can just use Swift Step again to escape to an ally who's maybe a little further away from combat. Honestly, I found Kiriko super fun to play during my short time with Overwatch 2 so far. Maybe I'm slightly biased because, you know, support main and all, but she is genuinely an exciting hero to have on the roster, if just for how cool it feels to use her Casino Rush. And that's that for the 3 new Overwatch heroes, Sojourn, Jungle Queen and Kiriko. If you were to ask me, these 3 are a great opening gambit for Overwatch 2, and with the game being free to play, likely to draw in a larger influx of players, I think what they have to offer in gameplay and character are great for keeping new players hooked. Assuming they pick them over the other 32 heroes, I mean. Not to bury them or anything, I'm just trying to make a point here. A point here that I've kind of lost focus on. Let's move on. I know it doesn't seem right for a gold level player to be making guides, but I'm really just trying to help out in any way I can. And if someone does find these little guides helpful in any way or form, then that's great, I'm glad I could help. I want to apologise for my slower uploads recently. I've been trying to get back into the swing of things following an almost 2-month long demoralisation period that really got me down pretty bad, but that's then, this is now, and right now, I want to thank you for watching if you made it this far. I do stream sometimes on Twitch, if you care at all, I don't know. I did make a kind of stream highlights video about my day 2 Overwatch experience, because day 1 kind of died, but anyway, the VODs of which you can find on my second channel, so hey, maybe I'll do more of that content in the future, who knows right now.